The Karev-san hauled the crate to the edge of the docking collar and pushed it through like a man disposing of garbage. It tumbled in the zero-G, end over end, a battered container the size of a shipping pallet, and Mara Drummer caught it against her chest before it took her in the teeth. "That's the last of the consortium's generosity," said Yevgeny from the airlock hatch. He was watching the Karev vessel, a needle-thin geometry of silver struts, begin its departure burn. 3 years of negotiations, and we get a crate of scrap. Drummer didn't answer. She was already working the latches. The manifest had called it a technology exchange package. The Karev-san had been precise about that phrasing. Not a gift, not a transfer. An exchange, meaning humanity had technically given something too, though what the alien consortium considered equivalent to a diplomatic packet of decommissioned components. No one on Drummer's crew had been willing to calculate. Inside the crate, 7 objects. 2 were recognizable as power cells of some kind, but the connectors didn't match anything in the ship's inventory. 3 were dense geometric blocks, not quite metal, not quite ceramic, that Yevgeny's field scanner couldn't resolve into any known alloy structure. 1 was a coil of filament so fine it was nearly invisible, wound around a spool the size of Drummer's thumb. And the last was a device the size and shape of a thick dinner plate, with concentric rings etched into its surface, and a single blinking amber light at its center that had been blinking since before the crate was loaded, presumably because nothing in the transfer manifest explained it. "The Karev-san's exact words," said Yevgeny, pulling up his tablet. "These components have exceeded their functional parameters for consortium application. Humanity may find secondary utility." Secondary utility. He set the tablet down. "They gave us their trash." Drummer picked up the dinner plate device. It kept blinking. "Get Priya," she said. Priya Kamal had been the Rosen, 4's chief engineer for 6 years, long enough that her hands moved through the engine room the way a blind person navigates a familiar apartment without looking, without hesitating, with a kind of absolute proprietary confidence. She had rebuilt the ship's drive coils twice, rerouted the cooling system when the original design proved inadequate for the outer belt runs, and once, during the Callisto incident that no one discussed anymore, she had kept the reactor from going critical, using a length of copper pipe and a prayer to no particular deity. She looked at the 7 objects from the Karev crate for 30 seconds without speaking. "The amber light," she finally said. "What frequency is the pulse?" "No one's measured it yet," Drummer said. Priya pulled out her scanner. 47 milliseconds, regular as a clock. She set the scanner down. "That's not a malfunction indicator. That's a standby signal." She picked up one of the unresolved geometric blocks and turned it over. Her fingernail found a seam so fine it was nearly invisible. "These aren't solid. There's something inside. Can you open them?" "I can open anything." She said it, the way a mechanic says a true thing. Not as a boast, just as information. Question is whether I should. The Karev-san's metallurgy runs about 2 centuries ahead of ours. If there's a failsafe I don't understand. "Brief me on what it is before you touch the internals," Drummer said. "I need to know what we have." Priya nodded, already reaching for her tools. Drummer left her to it and went forward to the bridge. The Rosen 4 was 42 hours out from Ceres Station, running a long elliptical to avoid the contested transit lanes near Jupiter's trailing Trojans. The war, nobody called it a war, officially, but nobody called it anything else privately, had been running for 11 months. The Karev-san consortium controlled 3 of the 6 transit choke points in the inner system, not by force, exactly, by presence. Their needle ships appeared, and their navigation recommendations were strongly advisory, and no one had yet been willing to test what happened if you ignored one. That was why Drummer's run to the exchange point had been sanctioned at the highest levels. Humanity needed to know what the Karev-san considered fair trade. What they wanted. What they thought of the species they'd been slowly, methodically cornering. What they thought of humans, apparently, was, "Here is our garbage. See what you make of it." Drummer stood at the bridge viewport and watched the stars and tried to decide if that was an insult or a test. "Captain," Yevgeny's voice through the intercom, "you should come down here." Priya had the geometric block open on the workbench. Inside was a lattice, no other word for it, a three-dimensional web of filaments finer than anything in the crate's other coil, suspended in a translucent medium that had the consistency of very firm gel. The lattice pulsed with a dim blue light that wasn't coming from any visible source. The pulse matched the amber light on the dinner plate device exactly. "They're talking to each other," Priya said. She had the plate device open too, its back panel removed, and its guts were a smaller version of the same lattice architecture. Same signal. Same frequency. The plate is I don't know the right word. An activator? A tuner? She looked up at Drummer. "This whole crate is one system, all 7 components. They gave us a disassembled system and didn't tell us what it does. They said we might find secondary utility," Yevgeny said from the doorway. "That's because they already found primary utility and moved past it." Priya sat back on her stool. Her hands were still. That was how you knew she was thinking hard when Priya went still. Her brain was doing something the rest of her couldn't spare processing for. "These power cells wrong connectors for our systems, but the output signature is in the right range. If I adapted the interface..." "Priya, I know. Brief you first." She took a breath. "I think this is a weapons system. Specifically, I think the lattice blocks are some kind of shaped charge substrate. The filaments are a delivery medium for whatever the plate device generates. The amber light is a readiness signal." She paused. "I think the Karev-san gave us pieces of a directed energy weapon that they've already retired because they built something better." The bridge intercom crackled. "Tomas. On sensor watch. Captain. 3 ships on approach. Karev-san. Configuration. They are not broadcasting navigation recommendations." No navigation recommendations meant no fiction of advisory control. It meant they were coming in as themselves, whatever that was. Drummer looked at the open crate, the dissected components, the pulsing blue lattice on Priya's workbench. "How long to reassemble the system?" she asked. Priya looked at components she'd never seen before 40 minutes ago, designed by minds that didn't work the way human minds worked, for applications she'd reverse-engineered from first principles in under an hour. 3 hours, she said. Then, maybe 2. You have 90 minutes. Priya was already moving. The first problem was the power interface. The Karev-san cells put out a clean 340-volt DC equivalent. Priya's scanner confirmed that much. But the connector geometry was hexagonal in a way that didn't correspond to anything in the ship's parts inventory. Priya spent 12 minutes staring at the connector before she went to the machine shop and started cutting. "You're going to fabricate an adapter," Yevgeny said. He'd taken up position at her elbow, not helping exactly, but present in the way a good crewmate is present. Available, attentive, not getting in the way. "I'm going to fabricate 6 adapters," Priya said, "because the first 5 are going to be wrong." She was running the lathe from feel, the way she did everything in a hurry, the metal singing under the cutter. "Hand me the calipers." He handed them over without being asked twice. The first adapter was wrong. The second was wrong in a different way, which was progress. The third made contact, but threw a fault code on Priya's improvised test rig, a circuit board from a decommissioned cargo drone, press-ganged into service as a voltage reader. The fourth adapter seated, held, and the power cell's indicator light shifted from amber to green. 1, Priya said. 61 minutes remaining, Yevgeny said. "I heard you the first time." The second problem was the lattice blocks. They were designed to slot into a housing that wasn't in the crate primary utility, Priya reminded herself. Meant the Karev-san had kept the housing when they upgraded. What she had was the ammunition without the gun, more or less. And what she needed to do was build the gun. She understood the principle. The lattice was a phased emitter array. The filaments were the emitters. The dinner plate device was the coherence field generator. It kept all the filaments firing in the right sequence to produce a directed output rather than omnidirectional scatter. What she needed was something to hold the three lattice blocks in correct spatial relationship to each other and to the plate. "I need a frame," she said. "Triangular. Each node." "Exactly." She measured. 43 centimeters. "From center." "I can weld that," Yevgeny said. "In 40 minutes?" He was already at the welding station. From the bridge, Tomas kept up a running update. The three Karavsan ships were not decelerating. They were not broadcasting. They had resolved from sensor contacts into visible objects, needle-thin, silver, beautiful, in the geometric way that things designed without aesthetic consideration sometimes accidentally became beautiful. They were running parallel courses, spread in a triangle that was almost certainly not coincidental, encompassing the Rosen 4 inches, a geometry that had a name Priya didn't need to say out loud. An encirclement. "Captain," Tomas said. "They're running active targeting sensors. Karavsan frequency LiDAR. They're painting us." Drummer's voice came back flat and even. "Noted. Kamal. Status. Frame is half done. Power is live on 2 cells. I need the coherence plate aligned to the lattice before any of it means anything. You have 30 minutes. I know." The frame came off Yevgeny's welding station with 19 minutes remaining. It was not pretty. It was a triangle of structural aluminum tubing, braced with whatever bar stock he'd grabbed first. The welds lumpy and over-penetrated, and completely solid. Priya slotted the first lattice block into position. The blue pulse deepened. Both blocks she'd opened, reacting to proximity, finding each other through whatever sense they used. Second block. Third. The plate device she mounted at the centroid of the triangle, facing out, and when she connected the third power cell adapter, the amber standby light went from blinking to steady. The whole assembly hummed at a frequency that was more felt than heard. Priya's back teeth ached. "It wants to fire," she said. "Can you aim it?" Drummer asked from the hatchway. She'd come down without Priya hearing her. Priya looked at the device. Karavsan technology. Retired. Given away. Reassembled in 90 minutes by a human engineer with a lathe and a borrowed circuit board and a crewmate who could weld a triangle fast enough to matter. "I can aim it," she said. "I don't know what it'll do to them." "Neither do they," Drummer said. "That's the point." She picked up the assembly. It weighed about 8 kilograms, awkward but manageable, and carried it toward the bridge. The Karavsan ships held their triangle formation, 3 vertices to the Rosen, 4's center, and for 11 minutes, nothing happened except that their targeting sensors kept painting the hull. And Tomas kept reading out the contact data in a voice he was working very hard to keep steady. Drummer sat in the captain's chair with Priya standing beside her, holding a weapon they'd built from cast-offs, and waited. The communication came in on the standard diplomatic channel, which meant it was intended to be heard. The translation lag was 3 seconds. The Karavsan used a machine intermediary. Their vocal apparatus didn't produce human-range sound, and the result was words in flat, grammatically precise English. Vessel Rosen, 4. You have interfaced with consortium technology outside authorized parameters. This constitutes a Protocol 7 violation. Prepare for systems inspection. Protocol 7. Drummer had read the consortium charter. Systems inspection meant a Karavsan crew came aboard and took what they wanted. She leaned forward. "This is Captain Mara Drummer of the independent vessel Rosen, 4. The technology in question was transferred to us as a gift. We've been using it." Another 3-second lag. "The components were provided as waste material. Interfacing waste material with active systems, constitutes. We didn't interface it with our systems, Drummer said. We built a new system. From your components. In 90 minutes. She paused. I'd like to demonstrate it before you decide how you want to proceed. The longest pause yet. 15 seconds. Long enough that Tomas looked up from his console with an expression that asked if she'd just made things worse. Drummer had been doing this long enough to know the difference between a silence that meant anger and a silence that meant recalculation. This one felt like recalculation. The response came back. Demonstrate. Priya was already moving. She'd rigged a basic directional mount from a camera bracket, jury-rigged to the bridge viewport frame. She set the assembly in the mount, keyed the power sequence she'd worked out on the workbench, 2 cells active, 1 in reserve, plate device at minimum output, and pointed it at the debris field they were passing through. Pieces of an old mining platform, abandoned decades ago, tumbling in slow rotation. She fired. The beam was invisible. What happened to a 2-meter section of structural steel was not invisible. The metal came apart, not explosively. Not with fire, but with a kind of quiet inevitability. The molecular bonds simply ceasing to maintain their interest in each other. The pieces hung in space, spreading slowly. The Karavsan ships did not move. Priya adjusted the mount, fired again. A larger section of the debris field, 3 meters, gone in the same quiet way. That's minimum output, she said to Drummer. The reserve cell would push it significantly higher. I haven't calculated the ceiling yet. She hadn't calculated it because she'd built the thing in 90 minutes from garbage, but she didn't say that part. The diplomatic channel stayed silent for 43 seconds. Then, you assembled a coherence lattice, directed energy system from decommissioned substrates in your ship's engineering bay, without specifications. We had the components, Drummer said. The consortium retired this platform 12 years ago. Our engineers estimated field assembly from separated components would require no fewer than 6 days and specialized fabrication equipment. Drummer looked at Priya. Priya had engine grease on her left cheek and a burn mark on her right forearm, where an adapter had thrown a spark. She looked like she'd done 90 minutes of very fast, very competent work, which was exactly what she'd done. Our engineers work differently, Drummer said. Another silence. Shorter this time. We are recalculating our assessment of the exchange value, the Karavsan said. The 3 needle ships broke formation. Not retreating, repositioning. They spread outward from the Rosen, 4's position. The triangle dissolving into 3 separate vectors, all of them increasing their distance. Not fleeing. Creating room. I think, Yevgeny said from the sensor console, that they're considering whether they want to be in our weapons range. Good, Drummer said. She didn't say it loudly. She said it the way you say a thing that cost you something and came out right anyway, quietly, and to the ship more than to anyone in it. Priya was already disassembling the mount, so she could take the weapon back to the workbench and figure out what else it could do. She hadn't stopped moving since Drummer said she had 90 minutes. She wasn't going to stop now. The Rosen, 4 held its course, undiverted. The debris field falling behind them, and the 3 Karavsan ships holding their new wider spacing, like they were making a point about personal space. Tomas made coffee. He brought a cup to Drummer without being asked, and one to Priya without being thanked. Because Priya was already deep in the device's internals, and wouldn't surface for hours. The amber light was steady. The ship flew on,